Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Phil Spencer.
If you ever want to alienate the gaming culture, review your AAA game like this. While this may look cool or rad or sick nasty to some, to anybody who likes the actual game part of a video game, they look at this and immediately throw up. QuickTime events are often red flags coming from the kind of game that's about to desperately explain to you how
cinematic
it is, and that it's really an experience you have to play to understand. Or that 30 FPS is an artistic choice. Or that black bars on the top and bottom of the screen makes the game better because it looks like a film. I can go on forever. The point is, that E3 reveal made me run away from this game like it was a crackhead riding a rabid dog. It took 11 years away from the anti-hype and a surprise vacation to Rome to finally convince me to play Ryse, Son of Rome. And I must say, it's really something you have to play to understand. Understanding Ryse, Son of Rome begins with understanding the game's main objective. It wants to create the ultimate interactive gladiator video game. This means cliches run rampant throughout the plot, often feeling like a semi-mystical reinterpretation of Ridley Scott's Gladiator without any of the compelling characters. However, these cliches are used as tools to fulfill the wishes of every male power fantasy around the globe. This is the part where I feel like I have to apologize to women everywhere. Us men are always thinking about the Roman Empire, and I'm so sorry. This game is a himbo's delight, where presentation and gameplay come together and slow dance to the tune of historic warrior cliches. Those QTEs that everyone moaned and groaned about is how Ryse implements the flashy violence found in Spartacus or 300. Multiple missions where the player is outnumbered by overwhelming forces is cinematically reminiscent of the Eagle or 300. Recreating the ancient battle technique of the tortoise is grabbed from a history textbook, but also 300. These influences shape the game's rule of cool mentality, where no matter how the player is interacting with the game, they are always going to be participating in something exhilarating. Although, understanding Ryse isn't about making peace with watching a cinematic experience, it's about realizing how much of a video game this cinematic experience actually is. E3 2013 implied a video game that played itself. This is what we call in the biz a movie. Blood and rain splash onto the screen, dirtying the virtual make-believe camera lens used to shoot the brutal action sequences. Crytek's pedigree and high fidelity captures those exhilarating heights masterfully. Ryse demands this cinematic gravitas, yet defies all expectations by having actual gameplay. Game or movie doesn't have to be so binary. Is the combat simple? Yes. But it buries enough layers underneath the cinematic presentation to engage players just like any other action game. Well, maybe not like any action game. Sword and shield is the skull and bones of the combat and gameplay. I hope that makes sense. Sword is the sole damage dealer, while shield opens up the enemy's guard. The greatest lie the E3 demo ever told was that enemies are locked into a QTE death sequence after just 1 or 2 sword hits. While the game introduces its execution mechanic on its simplest enemies, stronger enemies quickly join the fray to throw different colored buttons into the player's combat flow. Before long, blocking incoming attacks won't be enough. The parry and dodge buttons will become vital in avoiding special attacks that break through shields. Recognizing enemy types and combo patterns is how to be the most efficient at Ryse's combat. And the reward for maximum efficiency is maximum stat boosts. But more importantly, maximum flair. Woo! Don't assume the QTEs are just visual fluff. They grant specific gameplay bonuses chosen by the player that feed back into the combat loop. Executions add buffs to damage, health, focus, or XP, but never at the same time. Locking these resources behind executions encourages the most visually vibrant violence imaginable, satiating the player's needs on a moment-to-moment basis. Combine this with hard counters that put roadblocks along the path towards sick nasty executions, and you got yourself the most 7 out of 10 combat system around. Hell yeah, where all my 7s at? Oh. Combat turns into a rhythm action game of identifying when to block, parry, dodge, slash, shield bash, twist it, pull it, and bop it all the way to the top. Sadly, it isn't that kind of rhythm action game. But kudos to Ryse for not flashing a massively obvious icon whenever an enemy attacks. Enemy variety can only fill a shallow pool, which shackles combat away from the choreographed dance it could have been. Choosing simplicity ensures everyone gets to enjoy the male power fantasy of having the forearm strength to hold a Roman shield. But at what cost? Ryse yearns for spectacle, and the ultimate interactive gladiator power fantasy video game is one where the spectacular action never stops. Luckily, action is the core of the gameplay, which means the brief 7-hour campaign rarely wastes time on cutscenes to get straight into the battles. Ryse subverts the expectations of the cinematic experience by promptly giving the player control instead of rushing to take control away from them. Clichés are translated into fun gameplay scenarios and set pieces which breathe new life into these old tricks that plague film and literature. So of course, the Colosseum gets its own level, but Ryse remembers that it's first and foremost a video game, so it takes drastic liberties with how the Colosseum operates to cater towards gameplay rather than authenticity. Building every level around a different flavor of predictable complements the pacing and strengthens the otherwise straightforward combat to stay exciting till the very end. While a game like Infinite Wealth is a better game, with much more thrilling and complex combat, 7 hours of Ryse feels way less repetitive than 70 hours of Yakuza. Ideas are rarely rehashed to make each level stand out, and if an idea does return, then the game makes sure to elevate the challenge further. Sadly, said challenge can't be pushed much further, because the nature of hard counters means once the enemy is solved, then it is always a known quantity. This becomes predictable no matter how many enemies they throw at you. Even the specialized set pieces and varied minigames oversimplify what could have become more challenging and rewarding opportunities. Why do all projectile weapons aggressively auto-lock? What is this, a Rockstar game? Why is strategizing made superfluous? Why are there unnecessarily long and elaborate animations during climbing or executions? Dang, this is a Rockstar game. These are prime examples where the dedication to cinematic presentation gets in the way of the game. Ryse is far from perfect, but as a cinematic video game, it refuses to fall into the traps of its contemporaries. Hellblade 2 sacrifices whatever gameplay the first game had in favor of its cinematic storytelling and presentation, losing a bit of its identity in the process. Hellblade 1's combat to style ratio was balanced more like Ryse, but Xbox did what they do best and laid off the gameplay for the sequel. Ryse instead uses the language of cinema in service of exciting gameplay. Its adherence to flashy executions is no different than the Yakuza series' obsession with heat moves, a series that also adheres to the rule of cool when pairing cinematic flair with gameplay. So why is this philosophy praised in one game but demonized in another? Ryse was a good first step at reaching Naughty Dog's essential marriage between movie and gameplay. The Naughty Dog magic behind all their cinematic video games is that no matter what is happening in a set piece, the player is always able to interact with what's on screen. Keeping hands gripped to the controller is what fully immerses people, and immersion is an easy way to sell the blockbuster qualities of a game. Ryse does its best to make gameplay truly play like a film, and you know it's working when it is a better experience to play than to watch. Ryse Son of Rome succeeds in prioritizing gameplay through a cinematic lens. Gaming prejudice led many to believe that this game was begging to be seen as a movie, but it actually turned out to be a more traditional gaming experience beneath the button prompts. The ultimate cinematically interactive gladiator power fantasy video game experience spectacular called Ryse Son of Rome is a quality weekend game that will satisfy after accepting what the video game wants to be. Don't let the E3 demo fool you. Just because you may not understand what Ryse wants to be, doesn't mean Ryse doesn't understand exactly what it is. Now, what the heck is a slitterhead?